Chapter 1 this morning. Gabe read the scripture for us, so I'm going to read it again because we do want to reiterate a scripture and how important it is that we read it and understand it. You ever had an experience in your life, like we sang about a little bit just a minute ago, where even you go through these times when you want to say, God, are you actually like out there? Are you listening to me? Are you doing anything? Are you moving? And so we just sang a song that said, even when I don't feel it, you're what? Working. Even when I don't see it, you're what? You're working. So would you agree that there are times in your life when you haven't actually seen God do anything, or you haven't felt God doing anything, but yet you know deep down inside God was doing something? Okay. So there are times we go through maybe kind of like drought periods spiritually. So do you think that's because we're not connected the way we should be, maybe? Maybe. I got one maybe. Everybody else looking at me like, no, it can't be me. It's got to be God, right? I mean, if there's like quietness on the scene, it can't be like anything I'm doing. It's got to be something God's doing. And let me just say, if you've experienced a drought, and we all go through seasons of, intimacy where we get really close to God, and then we go through seasons where, unfortunately, the cares of life, come in and we get caught up in that, and it happens to everybody. I mean, that's what I've always said. That's what happened to David. See, David was a man after God's own heart, and he had this intimate relationship with Jehovah, and it was close. But David got wrapped up in the things of the world, and the next thing you know, Uriah's dead and Bathsheba's in your bed, and it's a messed up situation because you did not, caught off guard completely, right? So you were not intimate, so you got distracted. I think David got caught up in being the king and the privilege of being the king that he just lost sight of where God was, and he forgot how he got there. And so David got to keep being king, just so you know that, and God still loved David. But David paid a terrible price for his disobedience. And if you think God doesn't do that today because we live in an age of grace, you'd be mistaken. Because God's objective is to get your attention and to bring you back into Him. And sometimes because you don't listen very well, He's got to go to extreme circumstances to do that. I know that. I've said that before. Look, I'm not a patient guy, and I've prayed for a year and a half. Lord, teach me patience the easy way. Because I don't want to learn patience the hard way. You all think like that? I mean, if there's a lesson for me to learn, please don't take me through tragedy. Because this is what I've learned, maybe not for you, but in my own life, crisis is going to do one of two things for me. It's going to do one thing for me. Crisis in my life is going to drive me to the feet of Jesus, because that's where I know I need to be. But for other people, it won't do that. It'll have the opposite effect. Crisis will push them away, and they'll begin to question, is God even out there, and is He doing anything? So what I don't want for me and for you, look, I don't want you to have to go through crisis, and that's selfish on my part, but I'm just telling you, I don't want you to have to go through crisis, just like I don't want to have to go through it, because they're hard lessons to learn, but I'd rather do it the easy way, okay? So with that in mind, I want to talk specifically about God coming into your life and what He's doing in there. So John chapter 1 says this, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was what? The Word was God. The same was in the beginning with Him. And all things were made by Him, and without Him nothing was made that was made. In Him was life, and that life was the light of all mankind. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. Or King James says, comprehended it. Then in verse 14 we read, I love this. And the Word became what? Flesh, and dwelt among us. And we beheld His glory, the glory as of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth. And I want you to pay attention to that verse. It says, the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. Because God is with us. I'd go a step farther and say God just isn't with us. God's in us. And He wants to be a more part of us than what He is now. Bow your heads. Father, we want to thank You for this time to come together. It's always an exciting time to get together with my brothers and sisters on a Sunday morning and celebrate. I love it when we worship together. I love it when we get connected to You in a really intimate and personal way as a corporate body of believers. And Father, this morning, what we want to do is kind of settle ourselves into Your Word right now and let its truths begin to echo in our hearts and in our minds. We want to hear Your voice. We want to see what You're doing. We want to experience You in kind of a radical way. And to do that, we're going to have to make space. So right now, Father, we want to clear our heads, clear our hearts, kind of get focused right now so that we can make a space in our lives and say to you, Father, I want you in my heart. I want you in my spirit. I want you in my soul. I want you in my mind. I want you in all of my being right now, so that your word, which I already know is alive, would come inside of me and it would make me alive too. That it would fill every aspect of my being and it would ultimately transform my life. So, Father, clear out the clutter so that I can focus on you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. You ever get clutter in your life? I get clutter all the time. Not bad clutter. Clutter isn't bad, is it? Now, for my wife, clutter is like something that cannot occur in her house, just so you know. I don't get that. We have to live in a house that looks like no one lives in. So my wife's idea of our house should be, you're looking at a model home somewhere that's never been lived in, and that's what she, am I right, Lex? Am I right? Is that true? That's probably right. Gabe, you don't live with us anymore. Is that true or what? Gabe said, yeah, that's true. So if you come to our house, you're supposed to walk in and say, wow, this place is so immaculate, no one lives here. So clutter for my wife is a bad thing. But if you would transition from like the kitchen, where everything has a place. As a matter of fact, just so you know, I can actually fold the hand towel the wrong way and hang it back up, and someone will come along behind me and fix it. Okay? That's how serious this is. So if you were to transition through our garage door that goes kitchen to the garage door. So if you transition from my wife's kitchen to my garage, you're going to see two different worlds. One where like everything's just kind of in its place. Another where everything has a place and it's just wherever it ends up. Okay? So I have a tendency, just so you know, to accumulate clutter in my life. Right? Would you say that's true? Too much clutter. Matter of fact, my wife is always trying to rearrange my clutter. It drives me crazy. And so I just don't do that like at my house. I do that like emotionally. I do that spiritually. I collect clutter and I bring it into my life. And what that means is that if I've got all this junk laying around, so then, this is the funny thing. So then, if in the midst of my clutter I can't find something, do you know who moved it? Not me. I'm not going to say who it was, but it wasn't me. And it's certainly not that my clutter made a situation that's hard for me to find it. It's that someone took it from the place it wasn't supposed to be anyways and moved it to the place it was. That's the problem. So I'm just saying, when I got clutter in my life, it kind of creates a situation where I can't find stuff. Never my fault, by the way, but it's just frustrating. So look, I'm thinking spiritually now at this point, we do that same thing. We got all this stuff that comes into our life, and it just gets in the way. And it's not that it's bad. It's not that it's sin. It just gets in the way. And so when God's like trying to say, hey, can you pick me up over here? I'm like, I don't even know where you're at. Where you at? Make a little noise. Well, I can't hear you. How am I supposed to find you? So we bring clutter into our lives that does nothing more than junk the place up. So that when God calls, we trip over a lawnmower trying to get to him. And that's what we want to avoid, because that clutter is not good for us. And that's part of the reason I think that we go through spells. And by spells, like I said earlier, I think every Christian goes through seasons where we're close and where we're not as close. I don't want to say far away, but I think we just go through seasons where something drives us into intimacy, and then as time goes on, we kind of get back to normal, I would say, or we would say. And so we kind of drift away. Again, I'm not saying we drift into sin. I'm not saying we've fallen away. I'm just saying in this world with all its cares and concerns, we get caught up in other stuff. And God kind of takes a back seat. Now, here's the problem. The God who said, thou shalt have no other gods before me, I don't think is very happy about taking a back seat, because he doesn't want to be in the back seat. He don't want to be the passenger side. You know where he wants to be? Behind the wheel. So the God who said, don't have any other gods before me, yeah, he's gracious and he's loving and he's patient and he's kind, but I guess that he gets tired of always being forgotten about. And I have I'm maybe not you, but I'm just saying I have a tendency to do that as I get so wrapped up in my job, in my family, in the important stuff that I have to do with like building an axe throwing thing. I mean, you get caught up in that so that, your focus becomes on something other than God. Now, here's the real challenge, and this is the challenge. So I'm going to say, and this is going to be true for everything we talk about this year as it relates to intimacy. The challenge for us is not going to be, what do I have to get out of my life so I can serve God? It's how do I balance the God-given responsibilities that I have and my relationship with him? Because, look, as much as I would love to quit my job, can I quit my job? Rhonda, can I quit my job? Nope, I didn't even think about that. So as much as I, want to be close to Jesus, can I give up my hobbies? I could, but Brian says, no, don't give up your hobbies. So there are things in my life right now that are going to be a part of my life. My challenge as it relates to intimacy is how I balance those things in my relationship with Jesus. And what I should be able to do is experience life focused on Jesus, not distracted by all the stuff of the world, and at the same time, not being a monk or a hermit, or what are the guys that live in the monasteries? That's monks, isn't it? Yeah, being one of those guys, because I don't want to go that route. So is there a way we can do that? And that's what we're going to look at. It's going to be challenging, but I want to get you to that point where you're like, you know what? I can be a Christian, and I can balance everything in my life, and I can do it very well. So to do that, I want to talk first of all about how we create some space for God to move in. Because what I found in my own life in these last few months is that I really just don't make space for God to move in. I haven't created an environment where God can come in and work. And I think it's dangerous. You ever hear older Christians talk about their prayer closet? When you're growing up, you ever hear Christians say, go into my prayer closet, or I was in my prayer closet? So a couple of you are saying, yeah, you've heard that. I heard that a lot growing up. So the old timers that I went to church with talked regularly about their prayer closet. Now for them, what that was a space that they went to where they could block out everything else and pray. I think I heard Bud on a few occasions talk specifically about that. There was a place he went to where he'd do nothing but pray, and he'd get there and he'd get along with God. I think it's important we don't talk like that, because for most of us, the idea that you would have a space to go pray borders on extreme legalism, and that's just out the door. We don't want anything to do with that. I would suggest to you that it's a better idea than what we think today, because there's this guy in the New Testament by the name of Jesus, and Jesus says when you go into your prayer closet. So Jesus apparently did not see the extreme legalism that we see in praying someplace secluded. As a matter of fact, Jesus on multiple occasions would get up early in the morning, he'd leave his disciples behind, and he'd go into a mountain to pray. So it seemed to be pretty important to the Son of God, ought to be important to us. But I know most of us, if you're like me, you've got a place where you pray. See, I got my space. I got this place where I go to and pray, and it's not like out in the woods. It's not like secluded. Sometimes it gets interrupted. That's just the way my world is today, and your world's probably like that too. So what I'm going to suggest now is that we need a space that we can get into where we can meet with God. And by space, I don't want you to think, okay, I got to go home and do some construction and close off the corner of my bedroom and make a prayer closet. That's not what I'm saying. I'm talking, at this point, more about you spiritually creating room for God to work, rather than always be preoccupied with what's going on at work or what's going on with your kids or when hunting season begins and ends. Not that I would do that. Be more preoccupied with what God is doing first. And what I saw in my own life was that I spent a lot of time preoccupied with work and family and other responsibilities. I'm just going to I'm not going to say like hunting and fishing, because I love to hunt and fish. I'm just going to say other responsibilities, because that is an official responsibility, just so you know. Okay? So I'm going to put that in the responsibilities category. And what I found is that my life was kind of ate up with responsibilities of all different sorts. So much so that if I wasn't careful, and if I'm not careful, God kind of gets relegated to a few minutes, maybe morning or evening. And you can't have intimacy 5 minutes a day. Intimacy is not built that way, and intimacy does not work that way. Now, are there times when in your most intimate relationships there's not a lot of room for communication? Yeah, if you've been married, husbands and wives, do you just sit and talk for 3.5 hours every day? We don't. I don't anyways. So, no one, some of you just got that, right? So, some of you, was it Tuesday? Thursday, when, Rhonda had a meeting, had a meeting in the morning, so she left early, I left later, and we didn't talk until later in the evening when I got done teaching, like at 8 o'clock. So the whole day, went a whole day, and I think she texted once or twice, and I texted, and we didn't talk. Now, we still have intimacy in our relationship, so I'm not saying there aren't times when you can't go without not talking, but is it normal to be in an intimate relationship with someone and never communicate. No, it's not normal. So why would we believe then that it's perfectly normal for me to be in a relationship with God and have no communication except one day a week? That's kind of messed up if you think about it. And so I would suggest to you then that what we understand as intimacy or closeness or even relationship for that matter isn't really what's going on between us and God. There's more distance than what we would care to admit. And what we need to do is make a place for Him to work. And we do that by some specific things. And again, some of you are going to think, oh, you're bordering on legalism. No, I'm telling you what we have to do if you want to get close to Jesus. There are certain things you've got to do. You can't just say, hey, God, hey, whenever you want to talk to me, just shout it out. I'm listening, but right now I got work to do. You can't do that. If you want to create space, and this is how we create space. If you want to create space for God to move into, because what John says is the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. So what we want to do is we want to create a space for God to camp in. Because that's what the word means. We want to create a space for God to come into so He's close to where we are. And that's in that space, it's going to consist of, first of all, prayer as more than just rattling off a list. In my notes, let's see what I called it here. I think I called it something different. I called it communication. So actually what it says in my notes here is we need to make prayer a time of communication. Now communication is not just talking. Communication is listening. And I would say that in good communication, the best way to be a good communicator is to listen more than talk. Okay? But generally, prayer is not about listening, is it? Or at least in our minds, prayer is not about listening. Prayer is about talking and telling God either what He needs to do or what you think He should do or what He ought to do. Prayer, so what we need to do is make time so that our prayer life can be more than God, get me to work safely and don't let me have a bad day as I'm walking out the door. It's got to be more than that. There's got to be a way in which prayer communicates with God so that I hear Him as He speaks back. Because I believe with all my heart that God speaks. Now, I don't know that He speaks in an audible voice. I've never heard Him in an audible voice, but I would say that God speaks. So let me give you an example. This is the way my last week went. And I don't know why I decided this. Oh, I know why I decided this. So I think it was last Monday evening. The news was on. And as the news was on, I saw a commercial for Family Feud. Y'all know what the Family Feud is, right? Steve Harvey hosts it. He's a funny guy. And so when I saw the little promo for the Family Feud, I thought, that's hilarious. Whatever you just said, that's hilarious. I want to watch that. So I used my DVR and I fast forward to Family Feud. But then there were 3 episodes on, so I didn't know what episode it was. So I recorded all 3 episodes. And in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, well, I can just go watch all 3 episodes and I can figure out which one was funny. Okay? And then, as I hit record and went back to what I was watching, I thought to myself, hold on. I haven't watched Family Feud since I've been like 13 years old. I mean, Richard Dawson was the last guy I remember on Family Feud. Why now would I have this urge to watch Family Feud on a Monday night? Is that weird? Or does anybody think it's weird besides me? Yes. So imagine it's Alaskan Bush People instead of Family Feud. Because that would happen too. Now, so here's the thing. And I remember thinking, why did I just do that? So now I'm going to watch Family Feud. Not the episode. I'm going to watch 3 episodes, which is now going to occupy approximately, now technically an hour and a half, but commercials I fast forward. That's the beauty of a DVR, right? I can save all that time to worship God because I'm not watching commercials now, okay? So so let's say then that it's just an hour, not an hour and a half. So this is what I thought. Hold on, I'm wasting an hour and a half of my life on something I don't even care about because I thought it was funny. And then I looked at the DVR. And I'm like, who put all this stuff on here? Why is Rhonda recording Yukon Men so many times? Oh, Rhonda doesn't record Yukon Men. That's me. So anyways, on Monday evening, more than a week ago, I concluded that I maybe spend too much time watching recorded stuff on my DVR. And so I think, maybe not, but I think I fill my free time with cool TV shows to watch. Does anybody else do that? You see something on, no, you all don't have DVRs. You're more technologically advanced. You just stream it on Hulu or Netflix, right? Yeah, I know how it works. Criticizing me, and you better get that log out of your eye, folks. So we all got stuff like that in our eyes. We all got stuff like that in our lives where we're like, so this is what I found out. My life is consumed by Unnecessary stuff. I love to read. I like to read, don't I? I read probably every day, and I love to read anything. Nonfiction, fiction, don't care what it is. I'm always reading different books. And so that Monday evening, I thought, I wonder what would happen this week if I never turned on the TV. And I did not turn on the TV for a full week. In fact, I've only turned it on once or twice since then. I wonder what would happen. Wonder what would happen if I didn't do any reading for a whole week. Now, keep in mind on Monday, this was a great idea until I realized I'm teaching on Tuesday morning. Then it suddenly became a bad idea. Well, what would it be like if I read nothing other than the Bible the rest of the week? So my goal was to read and make notes on the book of Psalms from Monday evening to Saturday night. That's what I did. And so what I found out is this. I have a lot of wasted time in my life that I fill with unnecessary things. If I fill them, and so here's the way it worked out on Sunday. So as I'm going through my week, since I'm a pastor, I'm always thinking about what am I going to preach on Sunday? So I start putting together notes because, look, you never know what can happen on a Sunday morning. Tyler could have had COVID and couldn't have been here, could have had a car wreck, could have been any number of things. So I am prepared to preach on Sunday morning because that's what I do. And as I put together my notes for Sunday morning, I thought, okay, I think what I want to do is I want to introduce the concept of heaven because we're going to talk about heaven and intimacy. How do I want to do that? Well, I think the best place for me to start would be in the book of Revelation because there's this scene in Revelation where we see these flying creatures around the throne of God and they don't do anything except say what all the time? Holy, holy, holy. To the one who was, Lord God Almighty, who is and was and is to come. Now, does that scripture sound familiar to you? Does it sound more familiar than what normal scripture does? Probably because Tyler preached on that last Sunday. And when Tyler's like, open the book of Revelation for him, like, you kidding me? He just stole my scripture, man. What's up with that? And then I had come up with some scripture that I texted out to the elders. I think it started like 2 weeks ago. And so on Monday, I sent out a scripture. So on Monday morning, I had planned to send out a scripture, and I'd actually put them together in a particular order because there was logical flow to what I wanted these scriptures to say. And so I come here on Sunday night, and Danny is teaching. And Danny, what did you teach on Sunday night? Psalm 63. So I'm looking at this scripture that I'm going to send the elders on Monday morning, and it starts like this. You, God, are my God, earnestly I seek you. I thirst for you with my... Yeah, you get it, right? Yes. So here's what happened to me on Sunday. I'd picked out 2 scriptures that I was going to use that week, and both of them got used. And they're like, yeah, big deal. It's coincidence, right? No, see, I don't think it is. Here's what I think happened. I think for like 5 days, I got so dialed into what God was doing, I was just connected. And I can tell you, that week I was connected. Had a great day of class on Tuesday, great day of class on Thursday. My job that I really don't like very much, which is different than my Tuesday, Thursday, it's kind of fun. And I'm like, this is weird. I'm not used to this. So, look, I believe that if we create space and say, hey, God, can you come in right now? Because I don't have anything else to do, but I'd love to talk to you. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to read about you. I want to study you. I want to think about you. So creating space is about getting connected with God through prayer that's more than just talking. It's about deep Bible study. And I mean deep Bible study. It's about getting with God's Word and saying, God, your Word is alive. I want it to bring me life. I don't know what it means, but I want to know what it means. Danny texted me on that was Saturday night, Friday night. Had you ever made that connection before between those verses? Pretty exciting though, isn't it? So Danny texted, I'm not going to tell you what we texted about, I'm not going to tell you what verse we're talking about. Danny texted me earlier in the day. He's like, what do you think about this? You ever seen this? I'm like, no. So Danny texted me this scripture, and as we were talking about it, what I realized is there are lots of things in the Old Testament that connect with the New Testament, but we don't always get it because we're New Testament Christians, right? I mean, I don't need the book of Leviticus. That's for someone else, not me. Well, no, that's not true. Book of Leviticus finds its fulfillment in Jesus. And if you look really close, you see it. But we don't really look close to the Old Testament, do we? Most people don't until something happens that triggers something in Danny, and Danny's like, hey, check it. What do you think about this? And it is really cool, by the way. You're going to teach on that? Okay, well, I would suggest it if you're not going to. And he wasn't putting together a lesson. He's doing something else, just so you know. It was for a completely different purpose. But I'm like, that's what you get when you get into God's Word and start looking at it deeply. You're like, hey, I see how this unrelated event translates into God working in the New Testament through His Son. Deep Bible study where God's Word jumps off the pages and gets into you. And the other thing is kind of a weird term for us, but I'm going to say meditation, because I believe that if you got your prayer, if you're focused in prayer the way you need to be, and if you're into God's Word, just focused on that, what I would say is that meditation is going to be the natural result of that, where you just start thinking about what God's doing and how great God is, and ultimately you kind of put those three together and it creates what I call worship. And so what you find out is that you've got this space that no one else is in except for you and God, and what are you doing? You're just worshiping in the presence. That's all you're doing. That's all you're doing. And I'll tell you, one of the ways I kind of compensated for that, you ever wake up in the middle of the night, wide awake, and you're like, great, I got to be up in 4.5 hours. I wish I could go back to sleep, but you can't. I found a solution to that. You know what it is? Huh? Prayer. Yes, prayer. That's what I always told Lexi when Lexi's little. She's like, Dad, I can't go to sleep. I'm like, pray. Everybody I know falls asleep praying. Okay? That works. It does. So this is what I did to fill those empty times. Because believe it or not, I have empty times in my head. And they're not all on Sunday morning, just so you know. But I have these times where I just, I kind of get sidetracked and I feel my brain wandering from topic to topic or thing to thing. So I decided, this is what I did from that Monday night for the rest of the week. Anytime I was in prayer and I felt myself drifting, or anytime I woke up in the middle of the night and thought, okay, what do I do now? I decided that I was going to recite the 23rd Psalm over and over and over again until I got refocused. Look, I'm just saying, I think there are things we could do right now better than what we're doing to get us focused on what God is doing. Now, that's the introduction. Let's get into the text, because that's the important part, right? Yeah, I know. You're kidding me? Introduction. You're out of your mind. No, I'm serious. That was the introduction. So, what we find out in verse 1 of John chapter 1, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, because I think for the most part we get this. So, what we're talking about here is Jesus' eternal pre-existence with the Father. So, Jesus, conceived in the womb of Mary, born through that virgin conception, and lived for about 33 years on the earth, that Jesus was alive and pre-existed his birth, and he was in the presence of the Father. Now, if you want more detail on that and how that works out, see Tyler, because that is beyond the scope of my ability. I know that Jesus was in the beginning with the Father, and everything that was made by him. And without him, nothing exists today, because he was involved in God's creationary process. So when God said, let there be light, Jesus is like, yeah, let there be light. When God said, let dry land appear, Jesus is like, let dry land appear. And everything came into existence. So Jesus existed eternally from the beginning with the Father. That's what John 1:1 is going to tell us. And again, I'm not going to hash that out in great detail. That'll be for another time. We see in verse 3, he was active in the creation process. And let me just back up to verse 1 again and make this connection. Gabe, go back to verse 1 if you will. So, when we talk about in the beginning, the Word existing and the Word was God, everybody that I know makes the connection that Jesus is the living Word, and John uses this particular text to kind of illustrate Jesus is the living Word. And that's true. I'm not arguing that, because I do believe that. I think there's more going on here than what we see in John 1:1, because I think John, in this section, is making a reference to the book of Genesis. And the reason I say that is because in Greek, if you would have been a Jew living in this time reading the Greek copy of the Old Testament, you would have recognized the opening words of Genesis 1, and you would have recognized the opening words of John 1. Genesis 1:1 says, in the beginning, God said, let there be light. John 1:1 says, in the beginning was the Word. So Greek-speaking Jews, I think, would have picked up on something that we don't often get, in this process. So I think John 1:1 is an allusion more to Genesis 1 than it is about Jesus being the living Word. Now, is Jesus the living Word? Absolutely he is. It's what John says. But I think it's deeper than what we pick up on. And so that living Word that spoke life came, it created all things. And he says in verse 4, in him was life. And that life was the light of all mankind. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. Again, I think I said earlier when I was reading it, the King James says comprehended it. That word, the word that's translated as overcome, probably, we would say, I can't get a hold of it. That's what it means to grasp or to seize or to take hold of. So what John is saying is their light has come into the darkness. So the world is dark, but now light has come. And yet the world who received the light is not able to get their hands around it. They can't hold on to it. They can't grasp it for whatever reason. That reason we know is because they're lost in sin. And they can't see the light because they're in darkness. And so then we get down to verse 14, which is really where we want to be. And that is this moment when the Word became flesh. And so normally we talk about the incarnation of Jesus, and we'll talk about Mary's virgin conception and the virgin birth of Jesus and how he was created in the womb of Mary apart from any biological process. And he came into the world without sin. And that's all important and that's doctrinal, but that's not what we're going to do now. What we're going to talk about is the fact that the Word, Jesus, who is God in the flesh, the God who lives in eternity, the God who cannot be contained in any space. Now think about that. The God who is so big that he exists everywhere now took on the form of a servant. To me, that's mind-blowing. That God who is so big, the universe is expanding to contain him, now is contained in a man. His name's Jesus. That's the God that we serve. So the God who is so big that he cannot be contained took on flesh. Why did he take on flesh? I mean, that's the question. Well, why did he come in the flesh? Well, he came for one purpose. For you. For me. That's why he came. You know, you think about Jesus living on the earth. So does anybody know about how old we think Jesus was when he started his ministry? Roughly around 30. Tyler, does that sound about right? And he ministered on the earth for about 3.5 years, we think. So Jesus' total existence on the earth would be approximately, and I don't know how they date that, that's just what I've always been taught, would it be approximately 33.5 years. He spent 1/11 of his life in ministry as best we know. So you ever wonder what he's doing with the other 10 times? Or 90 some percent? You ever wonder about, Tyler, you ever wonder about that? I wonder about that. What was Jesus doing for the first 30 years of his life? Some people probably think, well, yeah, he spent 30 years praying. He's going to Calvary. He spent 30 years praying and fasting and studying the Torah. Yeah, I'm sure he did that because he debated with the teacher, so I'm sure he knew it. Like Jesus got to study the Torah, right? He wrote it. He didn't need to study. He just got it memorized. So I don't know. I mean, what was Jesus doing with his life for 30 years? I think, and I don't know, because we don't have any reliable sources from this time period, I think he was probably building stuff. He's the son of a carpenter. It would make sense to me that he probably was a carpenter. He probably made stuff. He probably built stuff. Did they have hammers? Did they have hammers back in those days, Tyler? Okay, I don't know how long a hammer had been around. Probably smashed his finger a time or two. Probably miscut a board. Hold on, can the Son of God miscut a board? He's human, right? I mean, why couldn't he miscut a board? Have to start over. There's actually this weird story, believe it or not, in some book, Gospel of Thomas or something like that, where Joseph and Jesus are building a table, and they cut one of the legs too short, so Jesus just uses his Jesus power and makes it a little bit longer. And Joseph says, what a great son I have. So I don't buy that, just so you know. I don't buy it's just a made-up story. I'm just saying, I'm guessing stuff like that happened. So Jesus spent the bulk of his life not engaged in like his earthly ministry that we know. He spent the bulk of his life being a man, doing what men would do back in that day and age, which probably is work and survive. And he did all of that. So look, when the Bible says, you know, we don't have a high priest who can't identify with what we've been through, Brother, sister, we got a high priest who knows exactly what we've been through because he lived it. He experienced it, and he came to where we are. So he came to be with us, and the bulk of his life was spent not in seclusion with 12 other guys. The bulk of his life was spent around lots of people, like anyone else in this day and age. God's a people person. So he came to be with us. So the Word became flesh, and it dwelt among us. And this is really where I kind of want to talk. When we look at what it means for the Word to dwell among us, that word literally means to put up a tent. Now, generally, I would say to pitch a tent, but for reasons that I'm not going to talk about, I'm not going to say that. I'm going to say camped. Jesus camped among us, and the word actually does mean to encamp, or to set up a camping spot, or to put up a tent. That's what we're talking about here. So when Jesus came among us, he made a dwelling place. That is, he intended to stay a little while. So when he moved in, he didn't move in and then quickly move out. See, that's why I think it's significant that we understand Jesus lived a long time among us before he started his process out of this world. The bulk of his time was living among us. Jesus still wants to live among us. You understand that? He wants to be with us on a regular basis. He wants to be closer than he is now. He wants to be more intimate than what we are now. Our spiritual lives should be a process of getting close to God. And it shouldn't come at the expense of the normal responsibilities we have. I think sometimes there's this idea that, if I really want to get close to God, then I got to start giving up a lot of stuff. I can remember, honestly, as a young Christian thinking, you know what? Man, I really love to hunt and fish. I love to hunt more than anything else. I don't know that I can hunt and be a Christian because I just don't know that God's going to let me do both because I like one so much. Well, what I've learned is I should be able to balance those two. I shouldn't have to pick one over the other. I should be able to live in this world and live in this world as a functional person without locking myself away in a closet saying, don't disturb me, I'm praying now. But sometimes I think that, if I really want to have intimacy with Jesus, if I really want to see God's power in my life, then I just got to block everything else and get away from it. I want you to know that's not true. Well, let me just tell you, in my experience, that's not true. And I've seen God do some awesome things just in the last, what day of the month is this? This is the 16th of January. What I can tell you is that I've seen God do awesome things in my life in 16 days in January. Things that I prayed about, things that I just didn't pray a lot about, and said, God, man, it'd be awesome if you do this. He did it. If you haven't seen God working in your life, you can see God working in your life. If you haven't heard from God in your spirit, you can hear from God in your spirit. If you look around and think, God, where are you in the midst of this mess we call America? You can see God if you look close enough. But you got to get all the clutter out of the way because you're tripping over junk and you can't get to the throne. Nobody going to say amen? Man, I'm going to say amen. That's right, isn't it? You got clutter in your life that's in the way, and you're content with the clutter. What I'm saying is let's do a little bit of house cleaning. Do you want to hear from God? I got one ASA family member left. So for the last 3 or 4 weeks, all I do, I've just been praying for that one person. God, you got to break her heart because you're the only one who can. She's stubborn, she's hard-hearted, she's resentful, she's angry. No one can get through. You need to break her down. And I don't care what you got to do. God, just break her down. I want to see her saved more than anything else, so break her down. Whatever you got to do. You guys don't have people in your life like that? See, here's the thing. I got people in my life that I want to see saved more than anything else. So I'm kind of at this point now where I don't care what happens to him physically or emotionally or mentally. What I care is about what happens to him spiritually. There is this, anybody ever seen the movie Apollo 13? Great movie. There is this scene, I don't know if anybody picked up on it. There's this scene in the movie, and if I could have found an awesome video clip, I would have shown it today, but mine's VHS, that doesn't work well. So there's this scene in the movie when after, everything goes wrong. Lex, you seen Apollo 13? Okay. So they're going. So they're going to do is this free return trajectory. So when the ship blows up and they're just kind of coasting along, what they're going to do is they're going to use the gravity of the moon to kind of pull them around and slingshot them back towards Earth. And as they are going around the dark side of the moon, they lose radio contact. So there's this scene where it's all quiet in the what they call that thing they were in, not the Nautilus. What was the ship called? Anyways, the ship they were in. They were using it as a life raft. The limb. So as they're in the limb, they're going around the moon. As they're going around the moon, the two other guys are looking out the window. Captain Lovell's kind of standing back there looking out the window, and he says they can see Frau Mora. Frau Mora was where they were supposed to make the moon landing. He's like, I can see our landing zone. And then he says, Jim, there's Mount Marilyn, because he named a mountain on the moon after his wife. And so as these two guys are like taking in all of this view, there's this scene in which he sees himself getting out of the limb and descending the ladder and running on the surface of the moon. Remember that scene? And you can see him in his spacesuit, and then he reaches down and he runs his fingers through the moon dust, and it leaves these deep trails. And then what no one picks up on, I don't think most people pick up on, as he's running his finger through the dust, because can you imagine what it would be like to walk on the moon? I mean, if you're an astronaut, he would have been, the second guy to walk on the moon? Or third? I don't know. Anyways, he'd been, it's select company, right? That's what you want to do more than anything else is walk on the moon. So as he is stooped down, running his fingers through the moon dust, he looks up, and coming around the moon, he sees the earth rise. And he looks and he watches the earth come into view. And then the scene goes back into the capsule as these guys are looking at all this stuff, and he says, Jim, you ought to see this. This is what he says. I've seen it. See, he'd seen it before because he'd been around the moon. It wasn't anything new to him. Then he says, gentlemen, what are your intentions? I want to go home. And I thought, wow, what a powerful scene. Sometimes in our spiritual lives, now don't think Apollo 13, think you. You are now on the moon and you're dragging your fingers through the earth. Or I got a better analogy. You are living your everyday normal life and you are caught up in all the clutter and you are fascinated by everything around you. You're like a guy on the moon taking it all in for the first time. And you're so caught up, but all of a sudden on the horizon you see a glimpse of heaven. And it catches your attention like that. Do you look up and say, I want to go home? Or do you go back to playing in the moon dust? Too often, I think, we go back to playing in the moon dust because we're so preoccupied with the things here and now. When we get a glimpse of what God is doing, we're like, yeah, God, that's cool. Give me a minute. I've got to finish up what I'm doing here. That's not the perspective we should have. We should get that glimpse of eternity and say, that's awesome. I want to be in that scene where we're standing around a throne and living creatures are saying, holy, 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 Lord God Almighty. When you get that, I'm just telling you, when you see that and you understand where we're going versus where we are, it ought to change your focus. So my focus for my unsaved sister changed. And that's why I could say, God, I don't care what you do to her life. Bring her to Jesus. Because that's how deeply I want her to understand Jesus. Now, if you've got people in your life that you love and they're not saved, let me add this. Just throw this out because we're going to talk about this later. We're going to talk about heaven. You know what else we're going to talk about? Hell. Why does no one want to say hell? Okay, everybody say heaven. Everybody say hell. Just want to make sure you can say it. I didn't know. Okay, so we're going to talk about heaven, we're going to talk about hell. Let me just give you the reality of the situation, just so we're clear. And I want everybody to understand this. So you may have friends and family that like when they were 8 years old, they came to the altar, or they signed a commitment card, or they said a prayer, and you think that they said a prayer at 7, so they're good. Maybe you need to reevaluate the nature of their relationship with Jesus Christ. Because just because you said a prayer, just because you signed a card, just because you went to the altar 30 years ago or 20 years ago or 10 years ago or 1 year ago don't necessarily mean everything's good. Okay? So I understand that. Don't fool yourself into thinking your unsaved friends and family who occasionally go to church or occasionally do something spiritual. Don't think they're good because they're probably not, just so you know. So for me, the reality of losing my sister for all eternity was more than what I really wanted to think about. So that's why I said, God, I don't care what you do to her. break her heart so she comes to Jesus. Because that's what I want more than anything else. That's what getting into space with God will do for you, because all the other stuff doesn't matter. So when you create space for God to move into, God is going to speak to you, not in audible voice. Don't go out here today saying, yeah, Brian just kind of lost his mind. I mean, he's been here almost 20 years. He never talked like this before. No, I'm just telling you, God will speak to you. You can hear him. He's not going to say, hey, Brian, don't be stupid, wake up. But he will speak to you. The question is, are you going to hear his still small voice in the midst of all the noise that you bring in on your own? And a lot of times the answer is no, I don't hear it, because I'm listening to everything else that's going on. Get stuff in me. Look, you think you got a little voice in your ear? I got a voice in my ear too. It's just not the same one kind of giving you different one giving me directions. And every one of us has got that. We've got noise in our lives that come in that says, do this, do that, go here, go there, think this way, think that way. It happens all the time. For me, that's why it was so important to turn off the TV for a while. Look, TV is just an incredible time waster. You know that, right? I mean, I know it's interesting and fun. It's an incredible time waster. For me, it all started about 2 years ago. Because I always say I don't watch a lot of TV. I don't think I do. Yukon men, Alaskan bush people, generally any Alaska or outdoor show, it's what I watch. And I don't watch them much anymore either. And the news. I've always liked watching the news. I don't know why. I always liked watching the news. Growing up, we always watched the news at 5 o'clock. So I still do that. But then a couple years ago, I was so disgusted by what I heard and saw on the news that I finally quit watching the news for the most part, and I'd record it and watch the weather. Got to know what the weather is. It's killing me not to know the weather. And so then I kind of I'd fast forward through it, but even when I was fast forwarding it through, I'd see a story, I'd be like, oh, I want to see what that says. And then I'd get caught up and be irritated all over again. So for me, I'm just telling you, for me, getting the TV out of my life, one of the best things I could do. And look, I'm just throwing this out as a suggestion. Try it this week. If you watch a lot of TV, turn it off. Spend time with God. Just try it and see what happens. If you're really into whatever you're really into, what I'm going to suggest is this week, just say, hey, you know what, God? I want to spend some time with you. So whatever it is that I'm into, I'm not going to do that this week. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to use that time, and I want you to come and hang out with me. I want to have you over so we can talk about things. Try it. See what's that. What I can tell you is that it is going to radically change your life. If you give God space to move into, then God is going to come in and say, hey, let me tell you how this is going to go down. And you're going to love it. That's what God does when he comes in. But we got to create space in which for him to do that. So Jesus came in to camp with us, to put up a tent, to hang out. He wants to be close to us. He wants to be where we are. And that's what God wants. See, here's the thing. I mean, we don't always desire intimacy. God always desires intimacy. That's always what he's looking for. It's always what he's longing for. He's wanting nothing more than to get into where you are so he can have a deep relationship with you. But you constantly got clutter in the way. And I'm just saying, we serve an awesome God who is so faithful to us when we are not faithful to him. We serve an awesome God who, when we don't give him time, just stand there waiting for us to make time for him. And that's just an awesome. And you think about, this. And you think about that parable of the prodigal son, of a father who is just standing there waiting for his son to come home. To me, that's just an incredible picture of a God who is patient and kind and long-suffering, just waiting and waiting and waiting until one day on the horizon sees his boy coming home. Isn't that incredible? That's the way God is for us. He is patient and he waits, and we fill our lives with all of this stuff that does nothing but get in the way while God just waits. That's why he says in Revelation, behold, I stand at the door and what? Knock. If anyone will open the door, I'm going to come in and eat with him. What about you? You think maybe it's time to kind of open the door and say, hey, God wants to come in for a visit. It's been a long time since we have spent any time together. I want you to come in and I want you to hang out with me. Stand with me and bow your heads as they come with a song of invitation.